Greetings. Welcome to the Captive Desk. From the Captive Desk files, this video will be on my understanding and opinions on YEC, Young Earth Creationism. YEC. What is it? YEC stands for Young Earth Creationism, the belief that the whole universe was created by a deity about 6,000 years ago. Creationism has its roots in religions that have a creator deity or deities and ascribe all of creation to that deity or deities. Old Earth creationists believe in a creator deity while also accepting the findings of modern science as to the age of the universe, that stars came and went billions of years ago to provide us with the elements for us to even be here now in our solar system. They accept the explanations for the diversity of life on our planet, and because of libraries filled with studies and data giving explanations for how it occurred. Old Earth creationists also hold to the understandings by scholars in Hebrew on the Torah that does give a current count of 5,783 years by their calendar. However, it does not date the creation of the earth, nor our solar system, nor the universe. It is 5,783 years since the life of Adam and a culmination of creation, not the beginning of it. Old Earth creationists and Torah scholars agree that the texts are a guideline to mankind, God's way to tell people how to live. There is nothing specific that dates the beginning of creation, and so there are no conflicts with science on the age of the universe. God does not hold to time, nor is it mentioned in the Torah that God does. Genesis is an overview of creation, and similarly, in other religions' stories about creation, they are also written as such. A culmination of creation by their deity or deities until mankind, the pinnacle of creation, appears on the scene. This is also acceptable to use within the timelines for humans that did start these religions thousands of years ago, that perhaps reached a spiritual level unlike before, and we can set a date to it, without rejecting how science explains how humanity evolved socially, settled down, and entered into an age of civilizations and societies that needed ways to not just communicate, but a need to have it written down in forms of records and contracts to prove land ownership, to pay bills and taxes, and to have a record that you did. And yes, to have laws written down, same as we need them written down and recorded today. Young Earth creationism is also a belief that the universe and all that's in it was created by their deity, but they claim it is less than 10,000 years old, while dismissing all modern scientific findings, data, theories, and laws that prove otherwise. That the earth is 4.5 billion years old, and that the universe is 13.7 billion years old. Young Earth creationists will point out that science has a margin of error in these dating methods. However, also ignoring that even if these ages are on the furthest ends of the range of error, it would only change them by 60 million years out of billions, and still make the universe and our planet billions of years old and nowhere close to 6,000 years. Young Earth creationists hold to a literal belief in the first two human beings being supernaturally created to live in a magical garden until Eve ate of the tree of knowledge, because she was tricked into it by a talking serpent. Genetics has proven conclusively that human populations diverged from an ancestor population of thousands of individuals, and at no time was there a genetic bottleneck of just two people. Young Earth creationists hold to a literal belief that death did not exist before sin entered the world around 6,000 years ago, that everything and everyone lived forever except for plants, as all other species of life were vegetarians, including the T-Rex dinosaurs, lions, tigers, sharks, crocodiles, and other carnivores, and they ate watermelons and herbs until after there was a flood around 4,300 years ago. Then the other species started eating each other to survive, but not before then. Young Earth creationists believe there was a literal global flood that covered all the mountaintops, that poured in from the windows let open in the heavens and from fountains below around 4,300 years ago, that wiped out all life on this planet, save for what animals and seeds Noah saved on a boat. There is no evidence for a global flood from any field of science. There is no evidence of a mass extinction of all life on this planet 4,300 years ago in any field of science. There are no windows in the sky to be let open to let water pour in nor pour back out. There is no genetic bottleneck for all life dating back 4,300 years in our genes, nor in any other species sequenced by any field of science. Nor, with a whiff of any common sense in the 21st century, does anyone think there was a global flood, nor even if there was, that some guy repopulated the globe with all the life forms we see today that he saved from perishing on a boat. Young Earth creationists will claim that because early writings by various means date back a matter of thousands of years, as do some of the older religious texts that will point out genealogies of people in them, and conclude that, therefore, creation must have been just before the written word first appeared. This conclusion from long ago is understandable, as the knowledge thousands of years ago was very limited or non-existent about the natural world, beyond their small time in history, their surroundings, and best guess understandings about them, often attributed to supernatural causes because that was their best guess to explain most things. The stories handed down from long ago were seen in a different lens then versus how we view long ago understandings today. With a far better understanding of natural processes, how long they take or do not take, and even before many modern methods arrived on the scene to date the Earth and the universe, naturalists in different fields hundreds of years ago were already getting an understanding of geology, the layers laid down in the geologic column, and the dynamic forces that form, reform, and shake, rattle, and roll our world were very old, and started thinking in long ages of hundreds of thousands and millions of years for these geologic processes to have occurred. There is always some resistance to new ideas, but as they are better understood, explained, and more data back them up, they are, even if begrudgingly, eventually accepted and added into the knowledge base. This is true in science and among scientists. It also applies to cultures, societies, groups, and organizations, religious ones, secular ones, and often dragging behind the political ones. However, Young Earth Creationism, the latest version of creationism beliefs that are fairly recent, although there were some very small groups and individuals, some cited by today's creationists, they were a very, very small minority. The YEC organizations today spawned mostly from around the 1950s and 1960s. These YEC organizations promoted in the 20th and now promote in the 21st century very unique ideas, beliefs, and interpretations of old Bible stories, with the purpose of justifying their beliefs are true by trying to discredit science, history, and reality, and well-established scientific understandings for that matter, in favor of interpretations of their religious texts that comes from a very few, way out of the mainstream religious people who wrote a few books. Believers like Henry Morris, a Christian apologist and engineer, not a biologist, geologist, physicist, or astronomer, a civil engineer. From Wiki, I'll put a link in the description. Morris was one of the founders of the Creation Research Society and the Institute for Creation Research. He is considered by many to be, quote, the father of modern creation science, end quote. In 1961, Morris co-authored The Genesis Flood with John C. Whitcomb, which some regard as the first significant attempt in the 20th century to offer a systematic, scientific explanation for creationism. The book was very influential on modern creationist thought. Stephen Jay Gould, a critic of Morris, called it the founding document of the creationist movement. The influence from Morris is still front and center, as the organizations and individuals promoting YEC cite him often and repeat his claims often, even though his claims hold no weight in the scientific community, nor most of the religious communities, nor by their scholars either, as they are not demonstrable, nor is there any evidence for them outside of old stories shared in old religious texts, but only when interpreted by a few in a way the majority of theologians do not hold to, at least not in the 20th and 21st centuries, who do accept the findings of well-established scientific understandings that answer many things about the natural world, and while holding to beliefs in a deity that created the universe. The many interpretations of old are interpreted with the times and become an accepted, better understanding of how the texts are read to and by the majority of believers in most religions. Natural disasters, depicted as supernatural events in mythological stories, may make a great story, but in reality, they are caused by a dynamic planet, whether folks that wrote the stories knew it or not. Illnesses, both physically and mentally, have, and discovered by science, natural causes and natural material cures. And for those that do not, as science advances and technology advances, more diseases, conditions, and injuries have, are, and will have more and more natural material remedies for them as time passes. The ideas pushed by young earth creationists that somehow people thousands of years ago, or even hundreds of years ago, had a better understanding of the natural world, that deities and curses from them, or their wrath, was the result of people's behaviors, beliefs, or thinking, has clearly and demonstrably been proven false. Believers and non-believers, believers of different faiths, those who hold different ideals and ways of thinking about the world, and all of mankind throughout time from around the globe, faced, are facing, and will face natural disasters, illnesses, and injuries. Some will survive, and some will perish. There are sunny days and rainy days, and no one is immune from them, nor are they being singled out by something, someone, or some being. Young earth creationism is a belief among a minority of believers in various faiths, although primarily evangelical Christians in the United States, that flies in the face of all of modern science. It is not in line with our understanding of reality and the natural world via science and scientific explanations that the majority of the world's population across different cultures, societies, and religious beliefs accept. Jewish and Hebrew scholars who study and understand the books of Moses that include the Genesis creation account accept that God created the universe and earth billions of years ago, because that's what God teaches through his creation. There is good reason 25% of Nobel Prizes in science have been won by Jewish scientists and not by YEC fundamentalist Christians in the last century. Rejecting about every field of science doesn't help anyone do any science, nor make great scientific discoveries worthy of Nobel recognition either. Young earth creationists' claims of bias against religious people by the scientific community is also proven false by Nobel Prizes given to believers. The scientific community welcomes new discoveries. There is no conspiracy against anyone that can present good science for peer review. Creationists just do not have any to present. Young earth creationism, summed up, is nothing more than a grift. It is a way to fleece misguided and gullible people out of their money. Creationist organizations can pull in a lot of money. Some make millions annually, while producing no young earth creation models for scientific testing, and being unable to demonstrate any of their claims in any reasonable, scientific, demonstrable, and testable way. Young Earth Creationism makes no novel, testable predictions. It contributes nothing to the scientific knowledge base. It contributes nothing to the advancement of societies. It advances no new inventions, medicines, cures, or technologies for the betterment of all using Young Earth Creationism's claims. Young Earth Creationism sells people bottles of snake oil with no bottle and no oil. Young Earth Creationism pads the bank accounts for those who lead and work for large creationist organizations, as well as smaller players down the line who write books, make YouTube videos, participate in debates, etc., for money. For money. Young Earth Creationists at these various organizations, from ICR to AIG to the Discovery Institute and more, sit in cubicles, trying to find gaps in science to put gods into, by out-and-out dishonesty, by cherry-picking and misrepresenting science, scientists, scientific papers, and articles about them using disinformation. They then further busy themselves writing blogs, articles, and books. They do speaking engagements, deliver lectures, produce homeschooling materials, and they make videos. Many are poor quality, but some organizations have very high quality materials from big production budgets, and it shows. They also must follow in their materials what all agree under contract to in their statements of faith they work under, that state things like, they know the Bible is right, and so is how they interpret it. So any science or history data that disagrees with their interpretations are to be dismissed outright. That's not how science is supposed to be done, nor is science done that way. YEC is not a pursuit of what is true about the natural world. Young Earth creationists are not in labs. They are not doing research, and they would just ignore any test results and data they do not like anyway, so what's the point? They have next to no facilities, and certainly none with the technologies and equipment to actually do real research and testing on things they often try to dispute, like radiometric dating. Young Earth creationism is the suspension of rational thinking. It advances the idea that anyone can make up anything, like man living with dinosaurs, riding them around and hitching plows to them like a Flintstones cartoon, and that it's on equal footing with a scientific consensus among experts in their fields via a large amount of data. If you're going to teach children of any age, man lived with dinosaurs and rode them around with saddles on them, why stop there? Why stop there? They may as well say the earth is flat, we live in a snow globe, that the moon is made of Swiss cheese, that unicorns were made of cotton candy, and the Ark of the Covenant was actually such an overly hot pizza oven it melted all the poor unicorns. YEC promotes medical disinformation. It promotes distrust in the experts in many fields in favor of blaming demons or conspiracies. And they did so when a new bug was running around recently, and that gets people harmed. YEC promotes ignoring the experts and the data accumulated over decades of scientific papers, including looking into the past with tree rings and ice cores and other samples, giving a bigger picture on climate change, in favor of deliberate disinformation and pushing a belief that their deity will take care of it, and no way mere mortal man could ever change the climate, nor would their deity allow it if we did. Young Earth creationists are evangelicals, eagerly awaiting the return of Jesus and the end of the world by fire. So why care about the climate or anything else, for that matter, that involves tomorrow's? The YEC denial and disinformation on climate change harms people and will harm even more. Young Earth creationism teaches children of all ages to not believe in science, to not understand and embrace all that science gives us, to distrust science and scientists. It teaches children to interrupt classes by bringing up nonsense to the teachers rather than learning, and impeding the learning of others. It teaches them scientists are liars and only out to deceive people into not believing in their religion, and getting in between them and their God, that they will face a stern, unhappy God full of wrath someday for daring to learn and understand science, scientific findings, and understandings about the natural world, and that science doesn't claim to know everything. It's an ongoing pursuit to figure things out and learn new things about the natural world, and that's okay. Young Earth creationism harms people directly with scientific disinformation that harms others indirectly as well. It harms mental development in young people. It harms critical thinking skills. YEC promotes bigotry against the LGBTQ community. It promotes not being a humane, rational, and reasonable member of society in the 21st century. A world that shouldn't be still arguing over who gets civil rights and who doesn't. In a world where you do not seek out a priest to get rid of the demons with some incantation, when your child, loved ones, strangers, or you are sick, you call 911 or go to a doctor. We have satellites and radar and weather channels 24/7 to use to see these storms coming. Praying or ignoring the experts because your young Earth creationism tells you they are all wrong, or lying because of some ulterior motives anyway, only gets people harmed and worse. One of the leading suppliers in young Earth creationism materials, including homeschooling materials, is AIG, Answers in Genesis, owned and founded by Ken Ham, who is not a scientist nor a theologian. He gets his interpretation of science and the Bible from his late father and from William Morris, doing their own kind of unique research, not in a lab or in any type of learning institutions, not from libraries filled with data, nor with any data of their own. No, from the way they read their religious texts in their living rooms, without any expertise in theology, nor understanding the Greek and Hebrew languages, nor any expertise or seemingly even any understanding of the fields of science among the many fields of science they claim to have proven false. Creationists seem to follow these cult-like YEC organizations in a desperate attempt to cling to a world of magic and make-believe. They want to slay a dragon. They want the wrath of their deity to rain down upon their enemies. They want to turn lead into gold. They want to be able to say magical incantations that bring the rains or chase away the storms, or change who was elected into office. They want to believe demons make people act the way they do when they screw up, that demons change people's sexualities or cause illnesses and natural disasters to occur. They want to cling to a magical world with magical beings, with magical stars and planets, with magical people. And let's not leave out the magical animals, the magic trees, and magical everything else in and outside of our universe, because it doesn't stop here. It's not just in this world. It goes into other worlds and in other dimensions of the many made-up supernatural realms that seem endless and pointless to even try to mention them all. Creationists can be smart people. Young Earth creationists can be smart people. Misguided, misinformed, gullible, but they can be smart people. AIG, Answers in Genesis, that have attractions in Kentucky, including a so-called creation museum and an ark park with a big old boat-sized building, employs people with degrees from some top learning institutions. They have legitimate degrees from accredited schools. They could be productive in the scientific community. Perhaps one of them, as one has mentioned was an early aspiration of his, was to cure cancer, could cure cancer. Instead, he is misguided via religious pressures to waste an education degree he and others are smart enough to have achieved and earned, to hang on a wall and collect dust as they pursue sitting in a cubicle writing disinformation, distributed to many in some kind of a cult-like sacrifice to their deity and CEO to appease it. Never mind the cost to others. Never mind the brilliant minds wasted. Never mind the wasted educations. Never mind the young minds wasting years learning this stuff, only to hopefully unlearn it later. That is time better spent getting prepared for higher learning. Never mind the millions of dollars wasted on these attractions and all the materials they sell, better served funding a charity or scholarships. Young Earth creationism is rejected by the consensus of experts in every field of science, history, theology, and philosophy. YEC is a grift to make the cons and sometimes the conning convicts lots of money that then empowers them even more, and their organization's reach expands and grows. And so does the cult-like organization's ways that they are set up. The long lists of rules they have to agree to work there. The surrendering of free thought. Entering into the personal lives of their employees in what they can and can't do off the clock. Give us your money. Donate, donate, donate. Leave us in your will. Donate money. Donate property. Donate equipment. And do not forget that paying rent and utilities or for your meds should come second to donating to a ministry, as these YEC organizations designate themselves as, and of course enjoy the tax breaks from it too. Young Earth Creationism needs to be pointed out for what it is: harmful disinformation pushed by con men and women to fleece misguided, misinformed people out of their money, to grow and expand their reach. And if it harms people educationally, physically, socially, financially, or mentally, they do not care. Young Earth Creationism is a cult-like organization that does not care who they harm. They have to be called out by everyone and shunned by the religious folks as well as secular ones, and not invited into schools or their churches to spread disinformation. There needs to be more push for YEC organizations and their for-profit attractions to be cut off from tax breaks and not give them any in the future. If they are making millions of dollars peddling snake oil disinformation, I think they are not the ones those tax breaks for churches were intended for. There has to be a push for strict rules and regulations in any and all guidelines for educational materials that prevents any young earth creationist disinformation from being in schools. If you see something suspect in your children's textbooks, contact the school board and have them explain it. And please do it in a civil and proper way. And/or contact your local politicians and express your concerns about any disinformation in the schools. If you are not satisfied with a response or a lack of one, there are organizations like the Freedom from Religion Foundation to contact. They have many resources and ways to help address these issues. If you hear YEC disinformation from the pulpit, contact the church leaders and express your concerns. There are many apologists out there that I do not agree with on their theology. And there are many other religious preachers and speakers I do not agree with on many other topics. Some of them say very horrible and bigoted things I in no way, nor should anyone, agree with. Yet, the majority of all of them have come out overwhelmingly against YEC organizations and have said, young earth creationism is nonsense. By theological standards, it is nonsense. By scientific standards, it is nonsense. And the majority of all religious scholars, historians, philosophers, apologists, pastors, folks in the pew and walking down the street say it is deliberate disinformation. It flies in the face of all that science knows, and they overwhelmingly agree YEC does not help bring in more converts. It loses them in droves. By chasing them off when people that have smartphones in their hands hear from the pulpit that man lived with dinosaurs a few thousand years ago, and one man had them on a boat, and they survived for a year via a planted window box full of herbs. This is one of the few times, and possibly the only time, I agree with the majority of all believers from all faiths, including their preachers, apologists, scholars, and philosophers. Young Earth creationism is nonsense. It is a grift to fleece misinformed people with disinformation, and it has to be repeatedly, often, and whenever it surfaces, pointed out, called out, and shunned for what it is. If you are a young Earth creationist, or if you have questions about what young Earth creationists claim, ask yourself, why are no young Earth creationist claims accepted by mainstream science? Why won't creationists present their evidence? Why won't they provide testable models and predictions to be tested, not online, but by those in the fields? Take the time to look up what science, history, theology, and philosophy experts by consensus actually say in the 21st century versus what creationists claim they say. Look it up yourself. Do not take a creationist's word for it. Do not take my word for it. The resources are available to fact-check my understandings and my opinions, or read for yourself what scientists in scientific papers say that have evidence through lots of experiments, research, and data to reach their conclusions on and by a consensus of their peers. Not because they are under contract to say whatever the CEO tells them to say, like all young Earth creationist organizations do. And by all means, look up their statements of faith that say things like the following from the Answers in Genesis webpage. Under their statement of faith, it states, "No apparent, perceived, or claimed evidence in any field of study, including science, history, and chronology, can be valid if it contradicts the clear teaching of Scripture obtained by historical, grammatical interpretation." If you already claim to know all the answers to everything in the universe, have you really done any research? Is that doing science, or in any way a pursuit of finding out what's true about the natural world? Have you gotten a consensus of experts to agree with you, or do you just want to feel good about yourself, thinking you have outsmarted all the experts in their fields by being uninformed and or repeating disinformation from those who excel in peddling it? And some do it very well, all dressed up to look like and sound like they are science institutions doing research in labs. And I can see why some people may be fooled into thinking they are legitimate scientific institutions or places of higher learning. They are not. And keep in mind, when AIG says the clear interpretation of Scripture, they are claiming that to be what the CEO of the organization says. And this applies to the other organizations with similar statements of faith. It is not what the majority of experts in religious studies say. It is not what those who study the languages say, and not what those who study the ancient cultures say, and not what every related field by consensus says. Who actually do and have done the studying, and who have learned the languages, and who have learned the genres of the times and styles the texts are written in. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to go looking for answers. Do not fear a loving God's wrath that a grifter uses against you because you want to learn or have learned history, astronomy, geology, biology, chemistry, physics, or many other fields of science. And ask yourself, why are they trying so hard and spending so much money in the pursuit of trying to keep you from learning about God's creation by giving you disinformation about scientific understandings? Maybe what they really fear is when you learn how the natural world is understood to work and can be demonstrated, tested, and falsified, you may find less evidence or none at all for their claims, and their grift of disinformation will fall apart, and you won't need them anymore, and you won't feel the need to support them financially anymore. This has been my opinion, my recommendations, my advice, and my expressions of disdain for young Earth creationism. I reached these conclusions from over 4 decades of examining young Earth creationist claims and checking them against what the consensus of the experts in theology, history, ancient languages, and cultural studies say, by what other scientists say by consensus in their fields, and what those say and have said who have shown these grifters for what they are: cons, only interested in your money, like the late great James Randi did. And if he was here with us today, he would say something like, always keep both hands on your wallet when you are around these religious grifters. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, share it, and subscribe for more videos to come. And maybe drop a comment below. If you didn't like this video, drop a comment below and let me know why. Thank you for watching.